Okay, so like I was saying, the people came from Africa and they came over to the United States. So that was their journey. All right, now I'm going to head back to sharing my screen. There we go. All righty. Thank you for being patient with me, 2A, and all of second grade. You guys are doing awesome. All righty, let's jump back in. Why did grandmother and the other Africans come here? Minty asked. It was not their choice to come from Africa, her mother explained. Africans were captured by men with guns and other weapons who wanted to bring them to America to work in slavery. They were put on these ships against their will, and then they were brought to this country and sent to places like plantations, farms, businesses, or households to work. Plantations are very large farms where crops grow. That's why our life is the way it is. We do as we are told, we do our best to survive. By this, Minty's mother meant that they worked hard to keep their families as safe and healthy as possible. Slavery is a terrible thing that has been used by many different groups of people throughout history, going back thousands and thousands of years. Alrighty, let's move on to the next picture. Here we'll see some slaves at work. Look at your picture clues to notice what kind of work they're doing. Alrighty, I'm going to begin reading again in 3, 2, 1. Minty's father and mother had 9 children, including Minty. But like most enslaved Africans, the family did not live or work together all in one home. Minty's mother worked for a man named Edward Broadus. Minty's father worked for a man named Edward Thompson, whose plantation was down the road from the Broadus home. 3 of Minty's sisters were sent away to work for plantation owners in Georgia. Minty never saw any of them again. As her mother said, enslaved people did not have a choice or say in the matter. The plantation owners did whatever they had to do to make as much money as possible from their plantation and slave labor. Because families of enslaved Africans often could not live together or were separated, they depended on a community of the enslaved Africans on the plantation. Mothers and fathers would take care of children who were not their own. Enslaved Africans helped and supported each other as communities by looking out for each other and working together. In this way, they could be strong together despite the fact that they were enslaved. Although life was hard for the enslaved people, this working together and helping each other contributed to their survival and made it better. Survival is the condition of continuing to live, especially when conditions are very difficult. When Minty lived, the enslaved Africans worked hard to perform many jobs that added value to the plantation. They took care of the horses and tended crops of tobacco, corn, and hay plowing, planting and harvesting. In the winter, they chopped wood, mended fences, and helped clear more land for farming. Many enslaved people were skilled at a trade. Some tended to the farm animals, and butchers preserved the meat. Weavers, spinners, and seamstresses were involved in the process of making clothing. Their skills were valued. Skilled carpenters constructed and repaired buildings and made furniture. And blacksmiths used iron to make and mend important tools for the life and work of the plantation. Many lived in shacks with dirt floors, had one set of tattered clothes and no shoes, and they didn't have enough to eat. Most enslaved Africans worked out in the fields, performing the many difficult tasks involved in growing and harvesting the crops. They were known as field slaves, and they lived the hardest lives of all. They worked from early morning until late at night, often with no relief from the heat or rest of their hard labor. They always worked under the watchful eye of the overseers, people who kept watch over and directed the enslaved people. The enslaved people always worked under the threat of punishment. Other enslaved Africans worked in what is known as the big house, the beautiful mansion belonging to the plantation owners. They did not have to work in the hot sun. They wore nicer clothes than the field slaves, and they sometimes had access to more food than the field slaves. In addition to daily cooking and cleaning, house slaves helped make butter, wash the household laundry, and care for the plantation owners' young children. That was Minty's job, which was why she was watching the baby at night. Just like those who worked in the fields, enslaved Africans who worked in the house worked hard. But also, like the people who worked in the fields, they helped each other a lot. And this made it less hard and less sad. Alrighty, let's look at our next picture. So it sounds like Minty's job is to take care of that baby from our first picture. Sounds like what her responsibility is. All right, here we are. Okay, so in this picture, we see a plantation scene. Remember, I just told you that a plantation is a large field where crops grow. So here it looks like I spot people working in the field, and I also spot men talking in front of the mansion, and I see some people working on the porch. Well, notice those things as well. Plantations, like the one where Minty and other enslaved Africans lived and worked, were common throughout Maryland and all of the states in the southern United States or the South. The South had rich soil and endless farmland. Those who owned the land could get rich by growing and selling tobacco, cotton, and other crops. Running a large plantation required many workers. There were no tractors and other machines to help them in those days. The enslaved Africans working on the plantation contributed valuable skills and labor to the success of the plantation. Without the enslaved Africans, the plantation could not run. They did many important jobs of all kinds. Even so, rather than hiring workers and paying them, plantation owners who were white forced people who were Black to work for free in a life of slavery. The plantation owners thought they could treat these African people this way because they looked different. Wow, that is super not right. Because of this difference in the way they looked, the plantation owners thought they were better than the people they enslaved. As enslaved people, they were not given wages. Wages means money for the work they did on the plantations. Millions of Americans, millions of Africans were taken from their homes and shipped across the Atlantic Ocean to live a life of slavery. And the children of the enslaved Africans, children like Minty and her sisters and brothers, automatically became enslaved the very moment they were born. They would likely remain enslaved until they died. All right, let's look at this next picture. Wow. Look at the picture clue, and I want you to write down or tell someone next to you how you think that Minty is feeling, or maybe this isn't Minty, but how do you think this character is feeling? I'm gonna write that down. Or you can tell someone next to you if you have someone sitting next to you. All right, from what I'm seeing from the picture clue, it looks like she's very upset or angry. Her facial expressions look like she's unhappy. Let's find out why. Okay. All right, this is a picture of Minty's mother protecting her children. As Minty's mother explained, enslaved people did not have the choice to be free people. Or did they? Early on, Minty began to wonder whether it was possible to resist or fight back as an enslaved person. She wondered this because she had, in fact, seen her own mother resist the plantation owner's wishes. When Minty was young, Mr. Broadus arranged to send her brother Moses to a plantation belonging to another owner. Minty's mother had already seen 3 of her daughters sent away, far, far away to another plantation down south, and she was determined not to lose any more of her children. When Mr. Broadus came to fetch Moses and send him away with the other plantation owners, Minty's mother stood in the doorway and promised, "I will not allow any more of my children to be taken away." Something in her eyes must have scared Mr. Broadus that day, because he turned around and he never tried to send Moses or anyone else in Minty's family away again. This event gave Minty a shred of hope that one day she might be able to fight back and possibly win her freedom. All right, do you think that Minty will eventually fight back to try to get her freedom? Write down your answer or tell someone next to you. I'll put 30 seconds on the clock. My prediction might be yes. It's going to take a lot of bravery to stand up against the plantation owner, just like we see in this picture that Minty's mother is showing a lot of bravery. We read earlier that they always worked under fear of being punished. So she probably knew that she could be punished by standing up to him, but she was brave and she did it anyway. I think that really shows a lot of strength. All right, for this next part, I'm going to ask you some questions and I'd like you to write down your answer or turn and talk to someone next to you. All right, I will give you a 1-minute timer between each question. What was Harriet Tubman's nickname as a child? What was Harriet Tubman's nickname as a child? All right, I hope you wrote down Minty. Minty was her nickname when she was a child. All right, question 2. Minty was an enslaved person. What does that mean? Minty is an enslaved person. What does that mean? Alrighty. So when it says that Minty is an enslaved person, it means that she is a slave. I hope you wrote that she is a slave. If you didn't get that written, you can write it now, or you can tell someone next to you now and fix your answer. All right, question number 2. From which continent, remember I showed you on this map, from which continent did many enslaved people come from? From which continent did many enslaved people come? I'll give you 30 seconds on the clock. Alrighty, so I hope you wrote down that many enslaved people came from Africa. So the continent is Africa, and it is this one. So Africa is the correct answer for that one. Next question. What important responsibility did Minty have as a young enslaved girl? What important responsibility did Minty have as a young enslaved girl? All right, I'll give you 30 seconds again. Alrighty, if I look back at my picture clue, I know that Minty's responsibility is to watch over the mistress's baby. That is her responsibility. Next question. What types of work did enslaved Africans do in the fields? So what types of work did enslaved Africans do in the field? They gave you a lot of options. You can write as many as you remember. Alrighty, so in the field, they did things like they plowed, they planted and they harvested the crops. So their job was to tend to the crops. They would plow, they planted, and they harvested the crops. All right, next question. What was the job of enslaved people who worked in the big house or the big mansion? What was the job of enslaved people who worked in the big house or the mansion? All right, so they gave you a lot of options. You could have talked about how they cooked, cleaned, did laundry, made butter, and cared for the young children. That was Minty's job, remember? Alrighty, last question for right now. What was life like for enslaved people? What was the life like for enslaved people? 30 seconds on the clock. Turn and tell someone next to you or write it down. Okay, so when it asks what was life like for enslaved people, it was harsh. They were often separated from their families. They weren't paid for their hard work, and they had minimal shelter, clothing, or food. That does not sound like a life I want to live. All right, so we're going to transition to the next part of our lesson, which is about word work. So this is where I teach you a new vocabulary word of the day, and it comes from the story. Our word today is value. I'll say value, and then your turn. Value. All right, good job. In the read aloud you heard, Minty would be forced to do the hard work given to her from sun up to sun down, providing great value to the plantation owner almost every day of her life. If something is of value, then it is useful and it is important. The car drives well in the snow, making it of great value during the winter months. What has value to you and why? I want you to write down or tell someone next to you a sentence with something that has value to you. You can use it in a sentence. All right, I'm going to tell you what has value to me. Miss C needs coffee to do her day. My coffee maker has a lot of value to me. Provides a lot of importance in my life because I need my coffee to run my life. All right, write down your sentence or tell someone next to you. Blank has a lot of value to me, and it'd be really helpful if you told me why. Because this. Alrighty, I'm excited to see what you guys wrote down. You can write them later in our Google Classroom. The next thing we're going to do is an activity to practice the word we've been working on, which is what? Value. You're right. Okay, so if the sentence I'm saying shows something of value, you're going to give me a thumbs up. If the sentence I'm saying does not show something of value, you're going to give me a thumbs down. Okay, here we go. Let's get started. A one-of-a-kind painting by the famous artist Vincent van Gogh. A one-of-a-kind painting from the famous artist Vincent van Gogh. Yeah, that's value. That has a lot of importance. An employee who does not work hard. An employee who does not work hard. No, if they're not working hard, they're not valuable. They're not doing their job. They're not providing you with things. A broken pencil. No, it's not important. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. It doesn't offer you anything. Nope, not a value. A guide dog for a person who is blind. A guide dog for a person who is blind. Yeah, that has a lot of value. That person relies on that guide dog to get around. They're very valuable to them. Next one. Food for someone who has not eaten all day. Food for someone who has not eaten all day. Yeah, that's valuable. It's going to give them a lot. They need that. A book with many pages missing. No, that's not going to be valuable. And the story is not going to make sense if a lot of pages are missing. Nope, not valuable. A calculator for a very difficult math problem. A calculator for a very difficult math problem. Yeah, that's going to provide a lot of importance in my life. I'm going to need that. Shoes that do not keep your feet warm and dry. Shoes that do not keep your feet warm and dry. Nah, not valuable. I need shoes that are going to keep me warm, keep my feet dry, get me from place to place. Nope. If they don't keep my feet warm, they're not of value. A yo-yo with a very knotted string. A yo-yo with a very knotted string. No, it's not valuable. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. If the string is very knotted, it's not going to get me from place. It's not going to go from place to place. It's not going to be helpful. Last one, a coat on a cold day. A coat on a cold day. Yeah, that's a lot of value. All right, guys, so that's going to be the end of my video, but there is going to be some comprehension questions that you can answer in the Google Classroom. So you're going to click on the assignment and you can type those answers in. I'm really excited to hear your responses because I know that you've listened really well. If we come to a question that you don't quite remember, then go back and watch this video again. The nice thing about this is you can watch them over and over again. I hope you are all doing great. I'm so excited to see you. You guys can dojo us pictures of you guys listening to the story, and we'd love to see your smiling faces. We miss you, and we can't wait to see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.